Hello.
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 So let's start this. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are. This is the Object Storage Working Group meeting. And yeah, this is, the date is wrong. It's the 23rd. It's not the 22nd. Yeah, so I was looking at the agenda. So it's the 23rd of November. So let's start with last week action item. So we had kind of four main directions. One was the blueprint. The blueprint is now merged. It's part of, it's more about defining the problem. The solution in there is labeled as starting point for the conversation in this working group, and the working group is the DRI for the blueprint as well. So I think we are going to edit the blueprint as we progress in the working group when we decide what we want to tackle, the solution we think is worth pursuing, and things like that. So there was another effort which is still ongoing, which is very important, and Matthias is leading this, which is collecting the current status of object storage. So he started doing this great job of pinging people and trying to understand what we have, what we're doing, to make sure that if we make some decision, we are not overlooking something. Okay, so if you see some empty spot in that document, if you happen to know who can have that answer, or you know the answer yourself, just fill in or ping someone that can help. This is very important because it shows us, it helps us showing how broad the impact of this working group can be, and can help us getting engineering allocation and having buy-in from several groups, because it touches various part of the code base. So there's another effort which is about collecting requirements. The conversation there started. Jason, you were active there. Also you, Kat, because we were discussing the geo stuff. So that conversation kind of stopped. Now, what can we do? Maybe we lost a bit of traction. There was contribute last week, as well as the release happening yesterday. So yeah, I think it's normal. But what can we do to get progress on collecting requirements and starting doing something more, having more actionable, something more actionable around this?
So I do apologize. I have been distracted from this by everything I had to get done for release. Right now, I think the biggest thing is we're trying to make sure we have laid out all the current expectations so that the new requirements are accurately filled in. We've started reaching out to other teams to try and make sure that their product managers are involved and they understand what's going on and why. And we actually just had David chime in, like it shows us 5 minutes ago on my screen as an example, with a bunch of information from the package team side. So we're still rolling in more folks from the various teams that have buckets. What we should probably do is piggyback the issue that Matthias has open to collect all of the teams and which buckets they're responsible for, or responsible for data that goes into, and make sure that they're also aware of this and add anything in.
Yeah, I do agree that this is one side of this collecting requirements, right? Because we want to make sure they cover the existing feature, as well as solving the pain point that we have with the current implementation. So I was thinking about, so how, before we move to the next point. So my point here is that right now we don't have a real plan. We kind of have more this draft plan that is part of the of the blueprint. So I'm expecting that we will end up with alternative solutions, right? So how can we score alternatives? So for instance, something that Gregor's mentioned in the blueprint today was maybe instead of shipping min.io, we can think about implementing our own service that handles storage, so that it can just go to object storage if customers wants to have object storage, or in local storage, but then local storage will be local to this component, so that we don't have the issues with min.io license and things like that, and can be just trimmed down to the specific need, because we don't need the full API of object storage, right? So this is something we got discussed in the past. It's a big effort. So how can we just score this type of alternatives, try to figure out if they make sense, or compare them with other solution?
Okay, so we definitely do need to collect a couple of solution options, because we're going to see a few come by. For the person who has to actually implement this in all kinds of scale, we need something that falls into the boring solution, if at all possible, preferably using industry standard tools, if at all possible. I'm fully aware of the licensing concerns when it comes to various projects. The good news is that our team is very familiar with navigating around the licensing requirements for that, in terms of how you interface with various components. I should say that the distribution team is very familiar with that, because we have to deal with it so often. The concept of implementing our own object storage service, or a storage service that then handles whether it goes to object storage or disk, it's not invalid, please understand. It's concerning because of the level of complication for the orchestration of it, right? Because then you also have to make sure that all of the endpoints, because you're probably going to need more than one, how to scale it, when to scale it, requirements, all of these things that come to operational patterns are really hard to nail down, as opposed to if you have a known good. I'm using min.io as an example in this case, which has the ability to run in a clustered mode, and you can reach it as a service load balancer in front of it. So you don't care about which node you hit. If you just get to a node and we're happy, you are given a good, viable and tested product out of the gate. So it's faster for us to go that route than to have to consider an entirely new service. Now, I say that being fully aware of what Gitaly did for us and why we had to do Gitaly in the first place. We needed to think outside of that box. So I'm not saying we shouldn't consider it. I'm saying we need to remember that there are a lot of already known unknowns, and that means that there's a bunch of things that we don't know to look for.
Yeah. I mean, for me, this was just an example. Yeah, I didn't want to discuss the specific solution, but it was more just making a point that we will have alternative proposals. So how are we going to drive this? So what I was thinking, and the reason why I'm fitting this conversation inside the collecting requirements, is that probably we could extract from the collecting requirements some kind of say a set of scores. So we say what we want to, let's say, have an easy migration path, or we just extract something: migration path, licensing problem, say amount of code to develop, things like that. I'm just saying random things, right? And so we can score alternative proposals. So we say maybe min.io, there's nothing nothing to code, but there will be a license compliance problem, right? So, and the other way around, you say we develop something there's no licensing problem because it's our own IPs, but then it's the scope creep and just handling this, or maybe we can have security concern as well, right? So we can try to have something that is that we can agree upon, and it is more easy to show and explain why we made a decision instead of just using gut feelings or just going this endless debate. My solution is best. My solution is not. It's not so good. So this was my point. I don't know if this is something we can start extracting from this effort. So if, say, we are waiting for feedback on point B because we still don't know if everything is clear, we can say we can shift the focus on C in building the scoreboard so that we can score different solution. Okay, so see nodding face, which makes me happy. I will ask if someone wants to DRI this. And as I said in last week meeting, the APEC one, when I'm asking people to DRI stuff, I'm not asking people to do the work alone. I just want them to be on top of that, pinging people and just making sure that we are moving, right? So.
Shall we go on?
Okay. Well, let's move on point D. So this is, Lukasz is not here. I remember maybe Ben, I think it was Ben Prescott, I'm not sure, volunteer for helping him. So this is an extra data point we have to consider. I'm not aware of anything in this direction that has been made so far, but the point is that we are thinking from our experience as engineers working on object storage and our experience as running GitLab.com on object storage. So what are our pain points? But customers are running different configurations. Namely, they are some of them are Azure and things like that. So this is an effort about collecting those type of information. So what our customers are using, what are their pain points, so that we make sure that those pain points are backfeeded into our selection of the best approach and things like that. So I don't think we have an update on this unless someone knows about this. If not, we can move to point B. Point 2 is quite easy. I'm just recording all the meetings and uploading them. There's a dedicated playlist. So some of them are private because we mentioned some customers and things like that. So just make sure if you're looking for something and you can find it, just switch to the GitLab Unfiltered account so that you can see them, but they are all there. So, okay. So any extra point we want to discuss here?
I'm good.
Okay, so there is an extra thing that you mentioned, Jason, which probably I don't know what you would think about this, which is the unknown unknowns. So there is a one effort that is not part of this four that I mentioned, which is also start working on some POC, because we are all engineers. We would like to also write some code as part of this effort, right? So we don't want just to only write markdown documents, which is good. I mean, we have to iron out some of those unknowns. So the thing is, we should list those unknown unknowns and the things that we want to experiment with some degree of POCs so that we can gather more information about them. So I'm not aware of any effort in this direction. So if anyone has ideas or wants to start filling a list.
For the time being right now, the way I see it is a couple of things. It's very hard to write down the unknown unknowns because you literally don't know that you don't know them. What we should collect.
How do you know that you don't know that you don't know them, though?
Exactly. That's the problem with unknown unknowns, right? It's a matter of wisdom. If you haven't had the time to run into something correlative, you don't know that there's something on the edge for you to run into. But the known unknowns, we can collate. That's going to come from two places: customer reports of pain points and our requirements, right? So I can tell you there are the three major ones that everybody thinks of, which are AWS, GCP, and Azure Blob Storage. These all function entirely differently. The next one is there are S3 compliant that are not actually S3 compliant. Okay, so there was a very large potential customer who went, we have our own S3, it's fully compliant. And then they pointed GitLab at it and watched it explode because they were missing two functions in the API. So the first thing to care about is if we put some sort of concentrator in play, it has to be able to speak the full language of all of these APIs, right? That's one that's right there. Then you have the problem of Azure Blob Storage, right? It's its own little thing. It operates in its own way. It handles most of the same things, but do we write code that has all the client libraries for this thing and this thing and this thing, which is part of the complication of carrier, wave, and fog now? Or do we rely on some translator party, right? So Alessio, this is where that having a storage service comes into play, because you abstract where the storage is going away from the storage, the upload handler. MinIO tries to address this with its gateway functionality, but it's in the same boat as fog and carrier wave, where it now has to support all of the various things. And there are caveats of we support most of this, but not that, or we support this, but there's a policy issue. We support this, but you can't use multi-part over this size, or these little things. We're going to find a bunch of those by looking through our support tickets, looking through our customer implementation attempts. So from what Ben is bringing to us from customers that he's bumped into, what we know from customers that have tried to use their own service and found out that it didn't quite work, and what we know of customers who have deployed in Azure and then had to deal with the fact that Rails can get directly to the object storage, but other things can't. There are definitely some pain points. Those are the known unknowns. These are the problems that our customers see and we're not 100% sure how to best address. Those are the unknown points.
Okay, I mean, this is something important. I would say that I think that in our documentation, we are kind of too light on say what we support. We can say it just work on S3 compliant. I mean, S3 compliant is S3 compliant. And if you are not, then it's fine, obviously, right? But I mean, we mentioned explicitly Azure. I'm sure it's mentioned there as well as Google Cloud Storage. So maybe this is something we should track as a kind of QA task. When you say if we claim that something is supported, then it has to be tested right in QA and make sure that we have end-to-end or test installation, because I mean we are not using all of those, right? So we will not be able to notice failure in this attempt unless we are actually exercising that test and that code. Okay. Any last minute comment or things like that? Okay, so I will give you all kind of 10 minutes back. Thank you for joining and see you next time.
Thanks.